the most common mistake that people are making with their small dogs is giving them too much freedom too soon, whether they come into their lives as a puppy or whether they come into their lives as a rescued adult small dog.
Welcome to the new episode of She Gets It Done. Make sure to hit subscribe, comment or like. We hope you love this week's episode. Enjoy! Hi Hillary, would you mind telling listeners who you are? And
I'd be happy to.
Where you're from? Yeah.
Sure. My name is Hillary Radcliffe, and I am a trainer just outside of Boston, Massachusetts in the U.S. And I have been training dogs professionally now for about 7 years. Okay. And I specialize in small and medium doodle dog and little dog training.
Cool. 7 years. What did you do before you did dog training?
Well, I did something that is very similar in my mind. I was a Montessori preschool teacher for just about 25 years.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
As well as I'm also a mom. I have 5 adult sons and 2 grandchildren at this point. Nice. And but they're all, my sons are all grown and out of the house. And my preschool, which I did for 25 years while I was raising my family, I ran up until March of 2020, and then we closed down because we closed all the schools during COVID. And I had already started training part-time a few years before that. Yep. And while we were closed down, I said, you know what? I've done that long enough, and it's time to go full-time into the dog training world. So that's how I got here.
That's awesome. I love that. That's actually so similar to me because I used to be primary school teacher for 10 years before this. And then COVID hit, and I did push a little bit through the lockdowns, but then we decided to move countries. And that's when I was like, nah, that's done. I'm done teaching now. And I went into dog training as well. Yeah, cool.
No kidding. Wow. A lot in common.
I wouldn't be able to do preschool though. That's too much fluids.
Well, let me put it this way. I work with dogs all the time now, both, at people's homes and here in my, on my property. And, people say, oh, dogs all the time. Isn't that kind of dirty and gross? I'm like, nah, after preschool.
Have that. Yes, definitely.
Yep. No, doesn't bother me at all.
Nice. Yeah. So you specialize in small dogs. How did that happen?
I do. So my own dog, well, how it happened is how so many people seem to get into dog training. I got my first dog 10 years ago myself, and my first dog as an adult that I would be, raising myself. I got a puppy, and despite having at that point been a preschool teacher and having raised all my sons, I did everything wrong with my puppy, and I spoiled the puppy, and I, let her just do whatever she wanted. And I found for the first year, I really struggled. And she's just a Havanese. So, and she's a big Havanese, but she was, at the time, she was 12 pounds soaking wet. And yet I couldn't walk her on a leash because she would not only pull me all over the place, pull me up to any other dog she saw, but she would also scarf up and eat all the acorns and the sticks and the leaves and, everything that was on the ground. And I went to several different local dog trainers who all were primarily treat-based. And their only suggestion for me with her on her, little harness or her flat collar that was useless was to just keep increasing the value of my treats. And one of them even suggested that I go out and I just can't even believe to this day that I go out and get a bully stick that was like 3 feet long and then have it in front of her and lure her through the entire neighborhood for our whole half-hour walk with a bully stick.
The literal carrot on the stick.
Yeah, really. When I think about that now.
Yeah. Do you think you got a lot of that advice because your dog was a small dog? Do you think you would have got different advice had she been a larger dog?
Well, it's possible, but the reality is that I live in New England in the United States, and there is, compared to the rest of the country, compared to the Midwest or the South or even the West Coast, there isn't a whole lot of training that isn't force-free up here.
Is it?
Which is why I'm so busy, quite frankly. But yes, I'm sure the fact that she was a small breed dog, absolutely affected the advice that I was getting. And, and I got some really pretty terrible advice, not only in person, but in books and on videos, to when she misbehaved, pick her up, and of course I was giving her, all of the wrong information, but I didn't know any better. So I struggled, to sort of close out how I got here. I struggled so much with my first dog a decade ago that when I finally stumbled onto some training that said, it is okay to say no to your dog. And here's some different methods and some tools that might be a little bit more effective.
Yeah.
I just grabbed onto that. But the irony is, at the time, I was the strict, old-fashioned, old-school mom in my town. I was the one who not only did my kids behave for me, but everybody else's kids who came into the house, they're like, oh, no, we're not going to mess with Mrs. Peony. But I was letting my dog do all the things that I would never have let my kids do.
Yeah, I feel like you see that a lot with people. Yeah. Big dog, small dog, old dog, young dog. They just allow so much that I go in, I'm like, would you allow this if it was a child? Or if this was a human being, would you be okay with this? And they'd be like, no. I'm like, so what's the difference then? It's crazy. I mean, I think for some reason, people must feel about dogs much more soft or protective or cuddly.
Well, dogs are playing dogs, and particularly in my world, small, fluffy dogs are playing a very different role in our lives than what dogs did traditionally when I was growing up, in the early 1970s and late 60s, early 70s. Dogs were dogs. And dogs, in my opinion, were a whole lot happier and more well-adjusted. But now we substitute dogs for, and so many people, particularly with the small dogs, for other elements of relationships that we don't feel we've got in place in our lives. And, what I see is that the dogs are the ones who pay the price for that.
Yeah. I definitely think that people kind of, when they look at a dog, they view it as a human, but they think very differently, and I think that's causing a lot of probably anxiety and everything as well. I think we put a lot of pressure on our dogs emotionally as well. So when we're stressed, we put a lot on our dogs and everything, and I think that's part of the problem. And and I think a lot of people have a problem with just saying no to their dogs, like they're being cruel, and I think it's been pushed a little bit. So now people never want to tell their dogs no. And that's where we're seeing this issue, particularly with small dogs. I would say that if I see a lot of dogs that are out of control, it's little dogs because they're never told no or given any direction in life.
Right. And there are a lot of people that think, well, I can let my small dog misbehave because they're not going to kill anybody. Yeah. But the reality is they can get themselves in a whole lot of trouble, and or they can trigger big dogs to have problems that these I feel so badly for owners who are working with their reactive big dogs, and then somebody with a, bratty little out of control small dog comes and sets back all their work because they don't feel like they need to control their small dog. Yeah. So I see a whole lot of that.
Yeah. And what would you think would be the most common mistakes that small dog owners make with their dogs?
For me, the most common mistake that people are making with their small dogs is giving them too much freedom too soon, whether they come into their lives as a puppy or whether they come into their lives as a rescued adult small dog. But because people either feel badly for the puppy because they've taken it away from their litter, or badly for the rescued dog because it had, some sort of unhappy beginning or, event in their lives, people want to shower these small dogs with love and affection and treats. And don't get me started about the market for buying stuff for the puppies. But I get asked, I do a lot of Q&A, and a lot of people say, what should I get? We're getting a dog. What should I get? And I said, you need to make time to train the dog. And you need to accept that your dog is an animal coming to live with you in, frankly, a very foreign environment, because we're asking a dog, which is naturally an animal, to come and live in a human species home, but not explore the home in the way that a dog would the natural environment, which is with all their senses, including their mouth and their claws and their nose and everything else. Obviously, people aren't going to mind if their dog is sniffing around their house, but they're asking the dog to come into the home and be in an unnatural environment without taking the time over some weeks and months to appropriately limit their space with crate use and or a tether line to the person, and gradually bring the dog into their lives successfully. Instead, they want to just throw everything, give the dog all the goods for free, and then everything just, falls off the tracks.
Yeah. Sorry, do you want to go, Toni?
Oh, no, it was just interesting that you said, like, they want to give them all the goods at once, but they don't want to do the crating and everything. I think there's a bit of stigma about restricting your dog's space, but dogs don't think like humans. They don't go, oh my God, you've not let me go to this room. Like, it's so, dogs actually settle in smaller spaces as well, like, because they can't, their brain doesn't go all busy all the time because they can move around everywhere. So if you actually restrict that space at the beginning and then slowly open their world, it's a much better way to do it.
Yes.
And I was actually going to jump into that as well. I mean, we see that with big dogs, small dogs, right? Too much space, I think, is like the root of the problem to most of dog owners' problems. But with small dogs or with puppies, like, I go to people's houses and I will say that. I was like, you need to restrict your dog's space. And people just don't want to do it. Do you do that as well?
Absolutely. I run into that all the time. And what I will say to them is, well, let's talk about how what I try to bring to my clients is how your dog is perceiving the world. Most of them have brought a puppy home or a small dog, and they've put them in the crate for the first time, and the dog has, whined or cried, done the little crate fuss thing, and they immediately take them out. So they've taught them to do that. And what I try to work with my clients on is explaining, we have to, for the good of the dog for its lifetime, we have to allow them to go through manageable amounts of discomfort in order to learn to relax, to learn that there aren't any predators here, to learn, what the boundaries and rules are, so that they can relax and become more comfortable and then have more freedom. And, I get less pushback on the crate issue than I do the issue that I get a lot of pushback on is I always recommend to people, puppy or new dog, that they keep a light little house line leash on inside their house so that they can communicate with the dog or step on the leash to limit it, just real basic stuff. And I have people who don't mind crating at all, but they can't stand the idea of their dog dragging a little line around the house. And so I spend a lot of time talking to the humans about dogs don't speak English or any human language. They're going to learn some cues, but mostly what they're doing is reading your body language and your energy and your intentions. So your conversation with them all day long is stressing them out, but it's not helping them learn the limits. Now, when you use your crate, teach a down stay, do the sitting on the dog exercise, have the dog in the approved part of the house, dragging a little line so that you can guide and communicate with them at the right moment, they have so much more success. And people think, at first they think I'm crazy, but then they just tried a few times. They're like, oh, I can't believe it. They understood. I'm like, yeah, that's right.
I definitely see that heaps as well. Like, people are resistant until they get problems, and then they're like, yeah, I'll try it now, and then it works. But I feel like it's just so hard because obviously you get a puppy and you're excited and you want to play with it, and then we come in and we're like, needs to be on a crate, needs to be on a teller, needs to not be everywhere in the house. And
a schedule too.
Obviously I don't bring it that negatively, but they're just like, oh, but I want to play with the puppy, but then get upset that he peed in a corner that you didn't notice, right? And that's it's just so hard to get that understanding that the dog will have to earn freedom. It's not given.
Yes.
And I think with small dogs, you'd have an even bigger problem because they can get in way more little places.
Yes. Yeah. And you can lose track of them very quickly.
Yeah. And do you find like house training would be a massive problem with small dogs?
You know, I hear that a lot. And I hear from my clients that, and I did hear from my own breeder when I first got my first Havanese. I have 3 of them, by the way. But I hear that breeders will tell people potty training small dogs is much harder than big dogs. My experience is, I mean, at this point, hundreds and hundreds of dogs that I've helped people train and or had here, you know, for board and train. And I don't find that to be the case if you go about it in a structured way, if you use the crate appropriately and correctly, if you keep the data and keep track of what's going in and what's coming out, and if you're realistic about how much freedom you give the dogs. I really don't run into that at all. But I routinely hear that that is still the message that is being passed along by breeders of small breed dogs who've been doing it forever.
I actually saw a video a couple of days ago, and it was a joking one about a Chihuahua that was pooing in the house. And one of the comments actually said, my Chihuahua breeder told me that a Chihuahua is never potty trained. So it's like there's just this expectation that, and I just laughed at the comment. I just closed it. I was like, that's enough. That's enough of social media for the day. But it's like, it's just like, oh, you just have to expect that you're always going to clean up toilet and like wheeze and poos in your house forever because apparently your dog, your little Chihuahua can't be toilet trained. I was like, what the hell?
That's just so hard. So sad to hear.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, it doesn't matter the size of the dog. It's got nothing to do with it. And I feel like you're discrediting the dog that they don't have the intelligence to learn as well because they're a little dog almost as well, that they can't learn to go toilet outside.
Right. I mean, people do small dogs such a disservice by assuming they can't be trained. They can't learn. They can't obey. They can't stop being yappy. That's nonsense.
That, or they can't walk for long hours. They can't do sport. They can't do dog things. Like so many people just get a small dog and they're like, oh yeah, well, they're just an ornament in the house. Like, I mean, obviously with feelings, but like, I love it when I see someone running with their small dog or, you know, taking them for a hike that I'm doing with my big dogs. Like they can walk.
I agree. I really believe that small dogs deserve to have a big off-leash life if their owners are willing to, you know, to do the work. And that, frankly, I believe every dog should have the ability throughout their lives to safely be able to be off-leash. And I am one of the few trainers that I'm aware of in my area that virtually every dog that I agree to work with, we do all the traditional leash training and I do positive training with treats and rewards. But before they are done training with me, they are going to get a big off-leash life. And I e-collar train small dogs, you know, all of them. And they love it. Yeah. They love to run and they now, granted, we are not taking them into the middle of the mountains and turning them into prey for mountain lions, but they absolutely are, you know, I'm in a very suburban environment outside of Boston, but they are absolutely going off hours to the playground and to the park, not a dog park, but a conservation land park where it's safe and they are able to get fulfilled and run and play just like any size dog.
Yeah. I used to have a small dog and she passed away last year, but she was probably my most intelligent dog I've ever had. and she'd pick up on everything and could do everything. She was reliable, everything. So I think any small dog can learn. Like, she was tiny and she picked up every trick, knew exactly what I needed from her, everything. So I find it really hard when people don't even let their little dogs reach their full potential. Like, they never get to go off lead or anything because they just don't put the training in with it, but they have all this potential.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that can be hard about small dogs is finding appropriate equipment that is scaled down to them. Yeah. So I've been talking, I've been showing an awful lot of long line work lately with the dogs, not only the board and trains that I have, but also in my one-on-one client work. And I actually I had searched on different online vendors for equipment that didn't have a big, heavy buckle that was as big as one of the, the small dog's paws or whatever. And I finally gave that up and started having 15-foot, very lightweight neoprene long lines made for me from an Etsy vendor, because I couldn't find good training tools that were appropriately sized for 8-pound, 9-pound, 12-pound dogs that wasn't equipment that was so cumbersome that it was dragging them down. Yeah. You have to get creative with these little ones.
Paracord works well. If you've never tried that, like, that's like, you can get that very small. I don't know, would you say that's in millimeters? That's so small. I don't even know the sizes of.
I know what you're talking about, because I actually have made some paracord slip collars to use when I couldn't find some other things. But I think using that as a line would almost be too narrow and would, run the risk of really cutting off the airway. So I really like it's just a 1 centimeter wide neoprene slip lead that doesn't have a heavy buckle because it's a slip. Right. And it's just got, it's all neoprene. So it's very lightweight. It's very easy to clean off. The dogs run around and they feel like they don't even know. It's so light, they don't know they have it on.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you, what's like the most common problem you get with your small dog clients, you would say?
Most people will call me for 3 different reasons. Either their dog is pulling them all, and these are small dogs, so we're talking usually 12, 15 pounds. Their dog, it's the same scenario I was in a decade ago. Their dog is pulling them all over the place and being yappy. So they need work on the structured walk, and learning how to lead their dog. So it's either leash pulling, or the dogs will not come when they're called, and around here, those people aren't necessarily letting them off in the park, but these are people who literally can't get their little dog to come in from the yard. So they're out there chasing them out, chasing them around, pulling their hair out like a lunatic, having a lot of trouble with that. Or I get a lot of clients who just can't get their young, it's not a puppy, it's not 12 weeks old, it's not 8 weeks old, but they've got a dog that's up to 1.5 years old, and the dog can't settle down. It doesn't know how to calm down and chill out. And so they don't, oftentimes the owners don't even realize that that's something that they need to encourage and teach their dog. But I get a lot of people who just say, our dog is out of control and jumps all over the guests. And here I am thinking, oh, what have you got? Is he knocking grandma over? Is it a big, herding breed dog? No, it's a mini golden doodle who's 17 pounds, but they're assaulting people at the door. Okay. Yeah. And so I spend a lot of time working with people on how to teach a dog to relax and calm down with you. And that's something that really gets the overexcitement element gets over nurtured in the small fluffy dogs because of the visitor factor. Yeah.
Going off that, so obviously talking about like hyper excited puppies, we often see this with people like having these puppies that are hyper, like unsettled and like hypo. What do you think are the main cause, like some of the causes of these, like of them being unsettled and so hyper?
The overexcitement. Well, I'm not going to discard the genetic factor, because there, unfortunately, throughout COVID, everybody and their brother jumped on the let's breed doodles bandwagon. Okay. So there is absolutely a genetic factor. But what I see most often is whether the dog has come from a wonderful breeder or not, the family gets the little dog and treats it like a living stuffed animal and laughs at its misbehavior and they don't mean to. I'm not trying to, shame any owners or at all, but the culture that we live in now is, you guys are, I'm really going to age myself here, but I call it, and it's true of, child rearing, unfortunately, what I observe, I call it the Simpsons culture, is that we laugh at the kid being mischievous and that the parents are too dumb to do anything about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to blame owners because they're all living in a culture of a lot of really bad misinformation. Give them some more treats. Give them some more treats. Give them some more treats,
But also just
you only know what you know.
That's it. But just look on social media at the thousands and thousands of videos of dogs misbehaving, and people just, oh my God, it's so
and let's all laugh about it. Right.
I just shared one on my page yesterday of 2 corgis extremely resource guarding, and they put a funny song behind it, like clickety clickety clack.
Oh, I know.
And people are just like, oh my God, that's so funny. I'm like, there's nothing funny.
There is nothing funny about that. No,
but
no.
It's funny because it's small dogs looking funny and they're not actually damaging anything. But oh my God, it drives me nuts. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, not interrupting at all. But I think that what causes the most small dog misbehavior is a culture of misinformation that these are actually real dogs. The idea that a little dog is just sort of an accessory and something that you kind of want to get, but you're not really committed to, dog training and dog ownership lifestyle with that animal. And frankly, I think people should, get a guinea pig or a rabbit if that's what you want. But and those animals probably shouldn't be treated that way either. But at least, they don't need to be fulfilled the way that a dog does. But I think it's a lot of that mindset about little dog as accessory. And then people realize, oh, that little dog actually has teeth. Oh, that little dog still is soiling our house. Oh, that little dog is running, snapping, lunging at bigger dogs and causing problems.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets past the cute puppy face where dogs are jumping up and everything, and then it gets a bit annoying. And then they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, not blaming anyone, because you only know what you know, right? Is the big thing that every time. Right. But it's like, well, this dog doesn't understand now it's older and it's bigger that it has to stop now. Like, it's only doing what's been reinforced its whole life.
Exactly. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it's also the environment, right? So if we see people walking the little toy cavoodle and it goes, people are just like, look at it. But if that was a German Shepherd, people would be afraid and cross the road. So it's also
absolutely
the urgency to do something about it isn't that big unless the owner is actually embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because I feel like for small dog owners, like when I get them and I get reactive dogs, small dogs, it usually comes from embarrassment. Like, oh my God, I look ridiculous walking this dog down the street when he behaves like this. I really need that fixed. It's not from the standpoint of like, I have a dangerous dog that I need to get control of, or I'm going to get in trouble in the future. Like if you have 40 kg German Shepherd going nuts, you have to do something.
Right. Nobody's going to ban Yorkies, in Europe.
No, exactly.
And I think that's where that laughing comes off as well. It's almost like a coping mechanism for them exploding, that they're embarrassed, but it's like, if I just laugh about it, it kind of diffuses the situation almost, and that then just becomes a coping mechanism, or they're like, oh, it's okay, come on, don't be silly, it's fine. I hear that a lot, especially like when I'm out walking my own dog or something and I hear a dog. It's usually that like, come on, let's go, instead of actually just dealing with the root of the behavior.
I agree.
or biting.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he
Yes.
nips a bit, but he sometimes he nips the ankles. I'm like, if this was a big dog and he nipped 8 people's ankles, you would slowly start to think about behavioral euthanasia, if this was serious. So it's just like, because the dog can't do as much damage, it's not so urgent to work on.
Right. And, there are so many people, even around here. I mean, part of why I'm so busy is because in the area that I live in, people, there's a lot of resources and people decide what type of dog they want. Yeah, there's less, just in my town, there's less rescue and more, purchasing from breeders of dogs. And they will, they will just decide, okay, this is what I want. And it's often based on the picture that they like the look of, you know. But the reality is that small dogs are in a package that keeps them looking like puppies for their entire life. Yeah. And people are very quick to excuse poor behavior by puppies. So people are quick to excuse poor behavior by small dogs. But it's the dogs that lose out, because then they get locked away in the home and they never get taken anywhere and they never go out into public and they don't go to the games, that the family all goes to watch the kids play. They don't take them because it'll just be yappy and embarrass us. And it's sad because it's the dog that's missing out on having a fulfilling or interesting life, because it's, people, I say to people, you might not want to use a crate, but if you've locked your dog in your house for its entire life, your house is just a crate.
Oh, I love that.
It's just a big crate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about we use a crate and teach your dog how to behave in the world, and then it can have a bigger life.
And what would you say would be like 3 of your non-negotiables when it comes to helping owners with their dogs? Like if you have someone come on board, I mean, I know this is quite a broad question, but in terms of what would be 3 foundation non-negotiables that you would do or not do, particularly with small dogs or even puppies?
Okay. So my 3 non-negotiables are, you have to be willing to start with limited space. And for me to work with me, that means we're going to do proper crate training. Okay. So you have to understand that the dog is an animal, and that all of the humans who live in the house are above in the hierarchy of your life together, the dog. Mm-hmm. So the dog is a dog. It's not, it's not, I don't like the term fur baby. I'm sorry.
Either do I.
I don't. So you have to accept that you are getting a dog, and we're going to, no matter what its size, we're going to treat it like a dog. So crating, the dog is a dog. And then I wouldn't call it so much of a non-negotiable, but the most important thing that I help people learn is that when you allow your dog to drag you around, you are letting your dog walk you. And that is going to leak into all of its behavior inside the house, outside the house, out in the community. When you allow your dog to call the shots, you are doing that dog a disservice, and you're going to struggle forever with that dog.
That's interesting, because we actually had a chat with Tyler Muto, and he said something about a situation. If you walk down the street and there's a policeman beside, right across the road from you, and you just go and beat someone up right in front of the police, and the police does nothing, right? And then the next day you walk down this dark alley and there's 2 thugs coming towards you, and that same police officer is right there, and you're really nervous about being beaten up. Are you going to trust that policeman is going to help you at all if they just let you go and do the exact same thing yesterday?
Right. Of course not. No.
Yeah.
They're completely ineffective. And that's the scenario of the owner that's letting their dog do anything that they want. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have to instill trust in our dogs that we can handle what's coming at us in the world. And that in my work, that most often manifests in leash reactivity or fence fighting, fence barking. And if we can't show our dogs that, hey, it's not your job to take care of that. I've got this. Then they can't trust us and they feel they have to go ahead and handle the situation. And that's, one of the things that I really do work with owners to understand. And many of them get it and many of them don't. But I try.
That's life, isn't it?
Yep, that's right.
I feel
you can't bring everybody all the way there.
That's it. What I do like to use with small dog owners is I'll tell them, let's just imagine that your dog is a Rottweiler. So every time he does something, think to yourself, would you allow this if your dog was a Rottweiler? And then I've had a few clients just go, oh my God, that just changed my whole perspective. It's like
I'm going to have to use that one.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't pick up a 50 kg Rottweiler when something happens, like you wouldn't do that. So I'm not saying don't pick your dog up, because I do think you should pick up small dogs in some situations. Like, like, I know there's a lot of people say, oh, my dog attacked your small dog because you picked him up. I'm like, I'm not going to leave my small dog on the ground for your dog. That's just not happening.
Well, I think that you can put yourself in danger by picking up your small dog, quite frankly, if there's a situation with a bigger dog. But the best defense is to avoid that situation entirely by being in control of your small dog.
Yeah. But, if the problem happens, I can understand why people pick up the dog.
Oh, sure.
I would definitely not leave my dash hound on the ground if I see a pit bull coming and I try to block and it's not happening. I'm not going to be like, well, if I don't pick you up, then at least that's what I've told owners, because you're not going to not have them pick them up anyway. They're going to be like, oh, I better do it. And I feel like
what you're speaking about is one of the biggest problems in our industry. Lack of common sense. Right. Yeah. Common sense is when there's a dog charging you that's off leash, you're going to do what you have to do to protect your dog.
Yeah.
And earlier when I was saying that these positive trainers were telling me to pick my dog up when it misbehaved, I'm not talking about any dog charging at us. I'm talking about when it was yapping too much. Let's pick it up and see if it'll stop yapping.
And that's what I meant. Like, imagine that was a Rottweiler. We're not picking a Rottweiler up when he's just yapping at the window or doing whatever it is. Yeah, I think.
But I think the element of common sense and just living with your dog the right way as the dog that it is what is so desperately missing from so many pet dog households. And I really see it in the small dog world, because people treat small dogs as they would a perpetual child that didn't grow up, just as if it is always a helpless child. And, as a mom of 5 and a former, teacher for a quarter of a century, I believe in empowering little learning beings to be able to make good decisions rather than doing everything for them. I don't think that helps them at all. But so many of these small dogs are kind of stuck in that over smother helicopter parenting world that it's just, unfortunately, it's really limiting who they can be and what they can experience throughout their lives.
For sure. And I think I made that mistake when I got my first dog, the little one that I mentioned, because my mum bought her for our family when I was about, 14, 15. And again, I didn't know anything, thought I was doing all the right things, taking her to the dog park, even though she was terrified of everything, because she kind of came from a little hoarder house and I only got her when she was 6 months, and did all the mistakes, try picking her up, everything, never did any training. And not that she was overly reactive or anything, but she was just so insecure in life. And then when I actually finally got into dog training and learned everything, it clicked. I just treated her.
You think back and realize,
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, for so many years, I was doing so many things wrong. And I was like, actually, when I just started treating her like a dog and just advocating and showing up for her, it just changed her completely. Completely changed her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all have similar starting stories, and I think that goes for a lot of dog trainers, because even though I don't have a small dog, that's how I got into dog training too. Lennox is my first dog. I never grew up with dogs. I grew up with horses, and we went to positive only school as well with him, puppy school. I didn't even know what positive only and balanced was, and go to the dog park and all. I just created this reactive nervous mess. And it's again, you don't know what you don't know.
No, and it's all through good intentions. I mean, I absolutely believe that everybody brings a dog into their life because they want to do the best that they are able to for the dog. They just don't know what they don't know and don't realize what they're reinforcing most of the time. So, I try to bring to my clients, whether it's people that I work with on Zoom or people that are here in my community or people that travel and bring their dog here to me for a board and train, which always involves lots of owner education as well. I try to bring to them the understanding and the information that I was you. I made all of these mistakes with that dog and I learned from them. So now I'm trying to share with you guys, but I totally understand why you did the things that you did. And there's no sense in feeling bad about it because we all start where we start. Yeah. I just don't happen to see people that start from an educated place about dogs because they don't come to a dog trainer.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also just getting relating to clients as well on that level as well almost helps open them up that they're not going to be judged or anything because again, you don't know what you don't know. So even before any dog trainer starts dog training, they have to learn everything at the beginning. So we don't know everything.
No. And we still don't.
No.
I still learn I learn new things every day. Yep. Without a doubt.
So do you feel like reactive small dogs, what do you think is the most common mistake owners make with them? And what would you where do you start? I know this is a really big question, but since this podcast is for dog owners, and I know there's a lot of them that will either have listeners that will either have issues with the dogs barking at the window, or they will have the barking on leash reactivity.
Yes.
And I think maybe it'd be cool to pick one of them and say, what will we do?
Well, let's talk about barking at the window, because I think it's easy to talk about the on-leash issue with anybody that you have on, and you guys have a lot of experience with that. But I do have quite a bit of people who have dogs barking at the window. So first of all, I explain to them that there's a reason that your dog is barking at the window. And it's a combination usually of three things. Access, because you happen to have your couch positioned under the window and your dog has learned how to either raise the shade or the shades, and I'm not advocating for people to pull down their shades and live in the dark, but I'm just explaining why this happens. A lot of trainers, maybe you guys do, call the dog sitting at the window or at the door with the light, with the window next to the door, doggy TV. Why are they watching doggy TV all day? Well, because they're bored and unfulfilled and they're not getting their needs met through play and another outlet for hours and hours and hours at a time. So they get into the habit of being up at the window and waiting for something to happen that they can then react to. So, access and lack of other fulfillment is a big piece of it. But I also tell people your dog's natural instinct is to alert the group. Hey, there's somebody out there. There's someone coming toward us. There's a delivery man. They don't understand the concept of UPS delivery, FedEx delivery. All they know is that they go up to the window when that guy comes to the door, and then that guy turns around and leaves after they've barked. Exactly. So they can think that they have caused the guy that was coming to the door to turn around and go away. And he'll come back in his truck the next day or week and do it again. But they'll bark again. And hey, they did their job. So the dog might think it's doing its natural instinct of warding off intruders. So that's a big factor too. And I do work with people. This is where I tend to get a lot of the resistance with the people that don't want to keep that little communication house line on their puppy, because then they will, if they go, some people just don't even hear it anymore, and they go on and on and on. And I find that a lot of dogs will alert. And if you acknowledge that and then tell them to do something, okay, get down from there now or whatever, they have fulfilled the need to tell you guys that to tell us that something is coming, and that can nip it in the bud too. But a dog that is getting a self-fulfilling response from being there and being as fierce as they can, you need to have a little leash on that dog so that you can go over, say enough, or whatever cue you want to use, and then give them a little correction, bring them down from there, give them something else to do, or put them in their crate, which isn't punishment, but it's managing the dog and saying, you're up there, I've given you that privilege. You can alert me that someone's there, but when I acknowledge, yep, I've got it, stand down. If they're not willing to do that, they're going to lose that privilege.
Yeah.
And if you consistently do that, they will stop doing it. But it's a consistency issue. They are consistently being more persistent at the window than we are consistently saying, got it, knock it off.
Yeah.
Do you think it becomes almost like a little addiction for them too, that it feels good as well to yell about it?
Absolutely. That's what I meant about the self-fulfilling element of it. Yeah. And that to me is a sign of a dog that doesn't have enough other outlets going on in their day. Now, I've got a board and train that only came in yesterday. He's right here in the crate behind me. And he is a high energy guy. He's 10-month-old, Cavachon, great little dog, but he is full of energy. And now he hasn't had an opportunity to bark here at the window. And that's not one of the goals that they have for him. But he very clearly, before I could start training and teaching him, he needed to drain energy. And so my solution that I find works really well with a lot of these little small pent up dogs is to take them out into my play yard. And I let them drag a long line. So, they are staying, engaged with it. And I get out a small dog flirt pole that's got a flat animal on it. And I could just stand there and wave it around and let them chase it, grab it. I teach them an out or a drop it, go back to play again. And we can, if I do that for 5 or 10 minutes, once or twice a day, that drains the dog. And so many people don't even know that really exists, because in the world of little, that's in the world, of sport dogs and big dogs. But you can use a scaled down version for a little dog and fulfill them just like you would a big dog. And it really makes such a difference.
Yeah. I think especially if you allow it too long as well at the window, it'll bleed over into anything. Bark at cats, bark at birds, bark at leaves that are flying through the street. And I feel like that's when it really gets out of control and owners have to, And then usually when I come in, they have seen either a positive only trainer or they've had online research, which is generally a Facebook group. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm rewarding him every time he comes off. Like, I don't know about you, but I never use that method, because I'm like, you're now teaching your dog.
You are teaching your dog to repeat the behavior.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It defies logic.
That's it. So for you say either a crate and a drag line for barking. Do you ever use something like an ultrasonic bark box or a bark collar? Like, do you go
You know what? I tried a bark collar years ago with one of my own dogs, and I found that I wasn't comfortable with an electronic device controlling my dog. So instead, I had already e-collar trained her. I used the e-collar and manually told her no, that's unacceptable. But I have had people have a lot of luck with different sound devices like the compressed air. Go ahead and do that. I'm not really one for using a squirt water bottle, because I don't really care for squirting water all over my house. But you can use any aversive that follows a clear and assertive no, and the dog will understand, oh, but you're not going to solve it in one time. You have to be consistent. And once you are consistent, it really, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. Do you think, to add to that then, for dogs that bark a lot at the window, when you're not home, owners should put the dog in the crate? And
absolutely. Oops. I seem to have I've lost my video feed for a minute, but yes, I absolutely believe that, can you still see me?
I can see you. Yep.
Okay. That's great. I just can't see you too, but I'll still keep talking. But yes, I absolutely believe that if you've got a dog that is practicing, barking at the window all day long, you do not want to leave them out in your house able to do that. You absolutely need to rework the crate training to be able to take that option away from the dog.
Yeah, I think it's definitely looking at the broader picture. And I feel like with barking at a window, people can get really narrow-minded on it, because obviously you see the problem and they want to fix that problem, and they don't see that you actually have to go wide, and it's like a wholesome approach.
That's right. And as I'm sure you talk about with people all the time, the barking at the window isn't the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. Yeah. The problem is the way that you are living with your dog and either not setting limits or not giving it a fulfilling life, giving it too much freedom. Not, it's just a symptom. And this is why I don't, sort of do one-off lessons with people, because I am absolutely all for correcting. I believe in rewarding and correcting dogs to help them learn what is and isn't acceptable. But I'm not in favor of simply shutting down bad behaviors, because the bad behavior is just a symptom of what isn't working in the dog or family's life together.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's the common misconception, right, about trainers like us, the balance trainers. People think that, I don't know why people think it, because it literally says balanced. So we use everything in a balance, but for some reason, balance is slowly becoming like synonym to aversive training. I'm like,
right.
There are sessions I don't use a single correction. There's days that I don't use corrections on dogs.
Right.
And then I use one and it'd be like, boop, done.
Right.
I'm so horrible.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm the same way, but I'm in a very fortunate position in my life. I am retired post my original career, and I interview people to decide whether or not I'm going to work with them. And I don't waste time or other people's money if I know that we're not a good fit. Yeah. And so really, I only work with people that are open-minded and usually they have already tried the all positive force-free approach. And, if I say, well, how's that working? And they say, it's not, because now we are trying to find what will work. So, I feel very fortunate, and I know not all trainers around the world have the luxury of being able to, to choose their clientele. But it works real well for me, and I feel very fortunate in that.
That's good. One last thing I would like to ask you, I don't know if Toni has other questions as well, but what's your take on affection with little dogs?
Okay. Affection is really important and wonderful, but we all give it too much and at the wrong time. So I believe every dog, who gets a dog that doesn't love it? We all love our dogs, but in my opinion, there are only three main ways to reward a dog: food, play, and affection. And when you are giving away affection all day long, 24/7, and the reason you're doing it is to meet your own needs, okay, then you have taken that off the table for your small dog. Many small dogs have kind of lost their play drive because a lot of small dog owners don't really know how to effectively play with their dogs. So that's pretty much off the table as a reward. So now we are down to only food, and food can cause in these small dogs so much activity. To me, I like to tell people this is every time that you put a piece of food, or when the dog knows you've got food, you are dripping gas on those coals and lighting the flames of excitement all the time. And if instead you saved your affection for not just training, but maybe limited a little bit more to an hour in the evening when we're having that really close couch time, and you invite the dog up and it's not pestering you for affection, but it's on your terms and you do it appropriately, that's a great way to share affection with a small dog. But if every time you see your dog, hi, 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 you are handsy all over it and picking it up and smothering it with love and all of that, not only is it going to make your dog anxious, but it has completely taken your verbal praise or a nice little pat when it does something in the training realm off the table as a reward.
Yeah, why would I work hard for affection when I just get it all the time and I don't even have to do anything? Like, why does it matter? Why would I work hard for it when I just get it all the time anyway?
Exactly.
And would you say there's a correlation then between getting too much affection inside the house to the dog having no interest in the owner out of the house?
Oh, yes. I like to tell my owners, your dog isn't paying attention to you, so you need to play a little bit harder to get.
I say that
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, people are too demonstrative with their dog. They give them too much attention inside the home, and then they wonder why the dog isn't paying any attention to them outside the home. There's only, your dog needs some space. You got to give your dog some space and downtime. And that can start with crate time. And then you can teach it a reliable downstay. And then, one of the things that I post about all the time on my Instagram is one of the healthiest things you can do is tell your dog not to follow you into the bathroom, not to follow you when you go upstairs to change the laundry. Now, stay, wait. You start setting those types of spatial boundaries, your dog is going to start appreciating, oh, she's available to me. Now I can, now I want to work with her and get engaged with her. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's major. There's too many people that then go outside and they will go and they will say the dog's name, like, I don't know, Charlie, 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 look, Charlie, Charlie, look. It's like, oh, the dog, you just stop.
No, there are 6 different wild animal smells out here, Mom. 3 chipmunks and a bunny that went that way. I'm not paying any attention to you. Yeah.
Because I get it unlimited in the house. So why?
That's right.
Like, here, you're not important. Yeah, I think. And with small dogs, and like that you mentioned food, play, and affection. So you have the affection that doesn't work. The play is meh. And then food. I mean, I don't know about you, but I work with so many small dogs that aren't food motivated because they are free fed.
Right.
Why is it that small dogs are free fed so much compared to bigger dogs? I wonder about that.
Well, they're not in my program.
Not in your program, but do you get them free fed?
Well, people who come to me say, well, we just leave the food down all day. And I say, well, that's why your dog is a picky eater. I have a whole lot of information on my Instagram about how to combat the picky eater syndrome. And you have to stop giving them an unlimited buffet all day and then continually upping the ante. But yeah, food is one of the main currencies of dogs. And if you're not using it well, forget it. And the problem with little dogs is that they can get overweight so easily. You've got very little to work with. So you better be setting limits and giving leadership to your little dog, because if you're relying only on treats, your dog is going to get obese and have bad behavior. So then you've got health problems and behavior problems.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've really noticed that was only a few weeks ago, because at the moment I'm doing a bootcamp program with a dachshund and a toy cavoodle. I've just finished 4 weeks, and now I'm going to start the next 4 weeks on Monday. And it made me realize how little food I can use with them. Like usually I use sausage for my big dogs. And I'm like, yeah, I need to, first of all, cut this way smaller. And I just started using their kibble, which, by the way, is teeny tiny.
It's teeny, right?
And I had to tell the owners, like, stop feeding them, because after I finished training them, they probably had a whole meal.
Definitely.
I said, take it away. So, and it's just something I never really stopped to think about until I experienced it. Yeah.
Completely.
All right. I think there's a lot of good info out there for small dogs. Is there anything you'd like to add? Any tips that you say, well, or you want to plug
the only thing that I really would like to do is just encourage people to treat their small dog as a dog. It's not a fur baby. It's not a toy accessory. It's not a living stuffed animal. Your small dog wants to be a dog. And they're not as fragile as you think they are. We have to be careful with them. We have to use sized down equipment that makes sense. We have to use common sense, but your dog wants to be a dog no matter what size they are.
That's it. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. Go check out the Instagram, Good Wellesly Dog Training. We'll talk to you next time.